Hey everyone, as always, Dylan Miller Prospecting, and it's equipment review time. And today we're going to be reviewing this, the Flower Gold Wizard Smooth Flow Micro Gold Cleanup Sluice. And yes, a sluice fits in this little bitty box, an over 2-foot sluice, by the way, because assembly is required. Now, this sluice was designed to capture the -40 and below gold because most sluices have an easy time capturing the larger gold, but sometimes they struggle with that micro gold, which is where the Flower Gold Wizard sluice comes in. And I'm going to test that with 2 pounds of -40 material. All this material is -40 or below. It has no gold in it. And to it, though, I am going to add exactly 100 pieces of gold. I am not going to be using a weight test because weight test scales can have a variance, and you could get 2 totally different weights, even if you put the same gold in it twice. So that is why I do a count. I will put in exactly 100 pieces of gold. At the end of this video, we will count up how much gold is left, and that's what the retention rate will be on this sluice. But before I test it out, let's go to the overhead and check out the sluice a little bit closer. Okay, here's everything that is included in the box. You get a sticker. This might not be included. Maybe he just threw that in mine. It does come with instructions. I will be reading that in a minute, and let's just see what's inside the box, which is a very, very well-packed box, by the way. This will be the slow flow header. Got this. There we go. These are all the pieces of the sluice. It does say in the instructions, which I did check out earlier before I shot this video, that you will need a rubber mallet or something similar to assemble this, which is exactly what we're going to do right now. That was a lot more nerve-wracking than I thought. Anytime you hit something 3D printed with a hammer, even a rubber hammer, you always do have to worry, especially when you hear the little creaks and stuff as everything's slid together. But it's all assembled, and it does show you, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but it does show you the zones, Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, Zone 4, 5, 6, and 7. And at first I was a little confused because I had one of the pieces turned around, and it went 3, 5, 4, so I had to straighten it all out. One other thing I do notice, and this has nothing to do with the review, is the colors are a little bit different. I guess they made them at different times or something, so it's slightly variance. This is lighter blue. This is darker blue. Not sure if it was on purpose or just different 3D material. Now let's go over to my testing jig where I will put the sluice to test with the material as well as the gold. So let's go test this sluice out and see how it catches gold. Well, finished sluicing everything out as you saw, and I have to say, I really like this thing. I also will say as a disclaimer, I might have been feeding it too fast. The angle might not have been perfect. The water might have been too fast or too slow. It is one of the things about testing equipment. You can never be 100% accurate. There are always variances that you can't control as well. Now, I started with 2 pounds of material, and as you see, I have a scale tailored out. We're going to see how much material this captured. And we got 2 pounds down to 1.2 ounces. That's not too bad. That means you're going to be doing a lot less panning, or more specifically, I'm going to be doing a lot less panning to see how much of that gold it captured. Now, a few other things of note. One, I know in his videos, in Flower Gold Wizard's videos, he does say to use a speed controller. I'm not fancy like that. I can't afford one of those. I just used a ball valve. I was using a 1100 GPH pump, the same one you use on the Gold Cube and most sluices, and I just cut the hose and put in a ball clamp and turned it down some. Now, as to the sluice, it seemed to work perfect. I will say a couple things, and one is that the material does seem to go in this little area right here. They're very, very little, but some material does go in there, and that's all happens if you use this as your starting point, or if you start dropping your material right around here. It did happen either time. I tried it because I did run the tailings a second time, and if I don't find all 100 pieces of gold in here, I will pan out the tailings the second time to see if the sluice caught it the second time around. So just beware that you will get a little bit of material right here, so just when you're cleaning it, just be aware of that. And it wasn't very much, very, very little material. Now, one of the things I don't like about this sluice, and this is just 100% personal, is I don't like this being on the bottom. I would prefer if it was on the top or on the back. It didn't really fit my thing, and it does tend to make the pump want to lift it up some. And again, that is just 100% personal opinion. It will not affect my final review on this, and there's probably a reason they started it from the bottom and they have the water going up. I'm just not that smart, again, to figure stuff out like that. It's just personal preference. But other than that, I really like the sluice, and it worked. I did think for a while I was running it too fast, and when I ran the tailings the second time, I decided to load it up even faster to see if it would clear the material. And it does a really good job of cleaning out the material really fast. It might look like it's being loaded up, but again, it is a really small sluice. It's only 3 inches, 24 inches of matting essentially. But I'm going to go pan this stuff down. We're going to see if it did catch the 100 pieces of gold that I ran it through it, and I'll do the final review. All right, finished counting up the gold, calculating my numbers, and let's get right to the review. Now again, I purchased the Micro Gold Cleanup Sluice from Flower Gold Wizards. Its cost is $75, shipping is free, so total cost $75. To test the sluice, I used 32 ounces of -40 material, had both blondes and black sands, and in the end I ended up with 1.2 ounces of material. So the cleanup sluice eliminated about 96% of all the material I ran through it. Now for the gold, I had 100 pieces of minus 40 and below. And after running it through the sluice, I ended up recovering exactly 100 pieces of gold. I recovered every single piece I put in that dirt, so I ended up with a retention rate of 100%, or a perfect 10 on my score. So it definitely catches the gold if it's minus 40 and below. I don't think it would catch larger gold. These little ripples on it aren't very big. And even Jason over at Flower Gold Wizard says it's not made for that, but it definitely does catch the micro gold. For functionality, I'm going to give it a 10. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It caught the micro gold. It caught all the gold minus 40 and below, so it's getting a 10. Now for craftsmanship, I'm going to give this sluice an 8. I am not a huge fan of 3D printed prospecting gear. It tends to break quicker than if it was injected molded or anything else. Now, I did say earlier in the video, I do believe the header probably should be made out of 3D printing just because it does have a baffle inside of it, and it would probably make it way too expensive to make it any other way. However, the sluice itself, I'm really not a fan of it being 3D printed. And there's two reasons for that. One is that it does make it a little bit more fragile, and if you tend to drop it, or like in me, I have a concrete floor, if I drop it, it's probably going to break. Now, the second problem I have with this, which is a bigger problem, is the way that this attaches. It only has a little pin or a slot at the very bottom of the sluice in all four sections, and you essentially slide them together. There is nothing on these sides. So if you flex it, and here I will show you. Don't know if you can see that, but it will actually separate on the top by just bending it and flexing it. Now, I'm sure you can pull this apart and glue it together, and that won't happen. But I would be worried if you didn't glue it together that the flexing might eventually break the little insert that inserts into the other one. I don't think it's a big problem. And again, that's why I didn't deduct a whole bunch of points. I only dropped it 2 points just because it's 3D printed. If I was keeping this for myself, eventually I will be giving this away to a Patreon member of mine. But if I was keeping this, I would just super glue it all together. I mean, I don't see a reason to ever take it apart. So if you just super glue it, that won't happen. And again, it's not a big issue. I think the bigger issue is probably if you drop it on your concrete floor. But for craftsmanship, I'm going to give it an 8. It is a really thick 3D printed. I think it's probably the best way they could do it this time to make these, because they're not selling a ton of them. Maybe if they start selling thousands of them, they will change the sluice itself to some other form of material. But for right now, I don't think it's bad, and especially with the price point of $75. For ease of setup and use, you really can't get easier than this. I do like that it comes in pieces so they can ship it cheaper, and then you essentially just slide all the pieces together. So it's definitely a 10 for ease of setup, and it's a 10 for ease of use. And lastly, for customer service and shipping, he's getting a 10 for both. But I will again put in another disclaimer. I did have to order this through his Patreon, so he did know it was going to me. He probably knew it might get reviewed, but there's not really anything he could do to it to change it. He didn't add a whole bunch of little gold in there, which I wouldn't have complained about, but it wouldn't have changed the scores anyway. And let's just flash those scores up on the screen as well, just so you can see. So the total score for the Fine Gold Cleanup Sluice by Flower Gold Wizards is a 9.6. And again, the only thing I really didn't like about it was that it was 3D printed and it does flex a little bit. And that's really only if you're trying to flex it. When it was sitting in my testing rig, it didn't flex, it didn't move. It's just something to be aware of. So would I recommend this sluice? Definitely. I really, really like this sluice. And again, I am going to give it away to a Patreon member in the future, but maybe not as soon as I would like, because there's a couple things I want to try out with this sluice because I really do like it. And it's definitely worth $75. If you struggle finding fine gold, this will make things a lot easier. Now, again, it won't do all the work for you. You will have to pan out some material in the end, but getting a few pounds of dirt down to 1.2 ounces definitely makes it easier. And then you can just stockpile that dirt and just keep running just the concentrates over and over and over until you have 1.2 ounces of gold. But that's going to be it. Thanks for watching. Happy panning. And if you're not already a subscriber, think about hitting the subscribe button below.